Gachiakuta is the new star in the manga cosmos, with an anime adaptation already on the way, and it absolutely deserves all the hype and praise it gets. It's got stunning art, interesting and fleshed out characters, great world building, an amazing story and one of the best power systems I've ever seen. But you probably already know all of that. And I don't really feel the need to make a video explaining or praising anything in particular about Gachiakuta, because tons of people have already done that. And honestly, I don't think I could do it better than they already did. But don't get me wrong, Gachiakuta is great and I love it. I actually have to stop myself from reading every new chapter the moment it comes out just so I can binge a few at once. And in one of those periods of self-torture, I thought to myself, if Gachiakuta is that good, surely it can't be the only good manga that the author ever wrote, right? So I started my journey to find out what came before Gachiakuta. To start my journey off, I took a look at the mangaka and illustrator of Gachiakuta, Kei Uranas, also known as Kanaru. She was a huge fan of Soul Eater by Atsushi Okubo, and she even worked for him as an assistant while he was working on his latest manga, Fire Force. Okubo was so impressed with her work that he would later go on to call her his successor. After researching, I found out that before she started working on Gachiakuta, she had already written and illustrated 2 one-shot mangas. The first one being one of the winners of the Manga Grand Prix hosted by Weekly Shonen magazine and was released in 2018 called No Kaze, Mind Shackles. In a world ruled by a tyrannical god, a young man decides to take matters into his own hands and slap the fuck out of him. So the world of Nokaze is ruled by a false god, but all of mankind worships him as the mighty god. Magi is the name for every being that possesses some kind of magical power or ability. And the false god keeps all of them and every other being that could possibly threaten his supremacy locked up in Azkaban. The box. Not a single prisoner has ever managed to even come close to escaping, until one day, even with the power restricting sea stone shackles on, the very rudo looking Jinma managed to muster up enough strength to escape. I will stop there with my summary to let you enjoy the rest of the one-shot for yourself. Yeah, so the story itself isn't necessarily mind-blowing, but what stood out for me was the level of art we see in Kanaru's first ever one-shot. It's not quite on the same level as Gachiakuta, but it's actually really good and already goes into the same direction as the ragged and messy looking art that we see in her current work. You can also already see the similarities in character design between Nokaze and Gachiakuta. Another really interesting thing is the power system in Nokaze, which obviously isn't fleshed out yet, but it definitely deviates from the norm, and knowing what a great power system she later created for Gachiakuta, like the avid One Piece enjoyer that I am, I can really appreciate a good piece of foreshadowing. Nokaze is only rated a 6.8 on my anime list, which is actually quite low, but it only has 60 pages, so it's a really quick read. Just check it out. So now that we have that one out of the way, let's take a look at her second work. Released in 2019, the one-shot with which she first gained attention as a mangaka because it actually won the 103rd Newcomer Manga Award, Shikido. Once upon a time, there was a peerless swordsman. Those beast-like eyes of his froze every single being. The wild way he swings his katana was akin to a truly fierce god. People felt reverence towards him, and so he was called Shikijin, the lion demon blade. So in the world of Shikido, the title of Shikijin is bestowed upon the strongest swordsman, so obviously everyone tries to claim the title for them. This is where our two main characters, Homura and Jin, come in. Homura is an overly confident loudmouth, while Jin is a sad looking emo kid. They always train together, and Jin always wipes the floor with Homura. Back in his father's dojo, our typical shonen protagonist Homura screams out that he will crush Jin and become the Shikijin, when suddenly a young swordsman crashes into the dojo with the intention to beat the strongest fighter of the dojo, which is of course Jin. And once again I stop before anything cool happens and let you figure the rest out for yourself. It's rated 6.95, which is slightly higher than Nokaze on my anime list, and it has even less pages with only 94. And I think that Shikido is a bit better than Nokaze, because even in so little pages, Kei Uranas manages to set up an interesting story with a nice little twist you actually don't see too often, which I left out of the review of course. I could honestly see this one shot get turned into a whole manga, and let me tell you about the art. The development from Nokaze to Shikido is crazy. The panels and characters are much more detailed, and she nearly perfected the rigid and dark style we see in Gachi. But I do think that Shikido is a step back in terms of the power system, because it basically doesn't have one. It's just the strongest swordsman with the most amount of guts wins. Nokaze, Shikido and Gachiakuta heavily incorporate combat. In all three of Kanaru's works, fights and the character development that happens during said fights play a heavy role. In her one-shots, characters find out who they are or who they want to be during times of crisis. And she keeps this idea and beautifully implemented into her current work, showing not only physical but mental strength and the ability to accept who you are and overcome the boundaries you set yourself. Like in every good shonen, in both Shikido with Jin and Homura and Gachiakuta with Rudo and Sanka, a more or less friendly rivalry pushes both sides to be better and overcome their weaknesses. Because Jin is so far above him in technique and raw power, Homura tries to become stronger to beat him and go on to become the Shikijin. But even though Jin is superior to him, Homura does not feel any animosity towards Jin at all. Actually, when Jin is in a dire situation, Homura even charges in and protects Jin with everything he has, disregarding his own safety in the process. I already said it before, but she had a great idea with the power system in Nokaze, which would have been interesting to see developed further. But the power system that she came up with for Gachiakuta is amazing. I love the idea of cherishing an item so much that it basically turns into a piece of yourself. And this just goes to show that you don't always have to follow the norm to create something good. Both in her art and writing, she decides to pave her own path, and it paid off. Yeah, I think that's all for today. I love Gachiakuta, and reading those two one-shots just briefly filled the hole that the missing next chapter button gives me, even though we are blessed with wiki releases. So just check them out for yourself, because together they are only barely over like 100 pages. Bye.